welcome back after lunch. I hope you have your energy back because the next topic is about the renewable energy. And due to a rather tense situation of energy source in Europe at the moment, there is more and more talk about faster increases in the capacity of renewable energy sources. In the port of Klaipėda, the LNG terminal is already in operation, and the initial project of Lithuanian hydrogen technology development study has already been prepared this year. The study envisages the development and use of hydrogen technologies in port shipping processes and in the transport sector related to port operations. In addition, procedures have been initiated for establishment of the first offshore wind farm. The port of Klaipėda aims to become the main service port for developing green energy projects, starting from 2026. Infrastructure will be ready to serve such parks. So I would like to move on to our next speaker, Rytis Valūnas, who is a Chief Officer for Corporate Affairs at Klaipėdos Nafta. Rytis Valūnas, he is responsible for innovation projects and ECG. He has worked at the company for nearly 10 years, including execution of Lithuanian's LNG terminal project Independence, LNG terminal project in port of Açu, Brazil, and development of Klaipėdos Nafta digital and innovation strategy. Rytis is also a board member at international biomass stock exchange company Baltpol and ferry services provider Smiltynas Perkelas, supervisory committee member at Klaipėdos Nafta Açu Servicos de Terminal de GNL, and president of BMI Alumni Executive Club. So he will present a case of Klaipėdos Nafta, prerequisites for net zero transformation in oil and gas transshipment business. So Rytis, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Simona. So hello once again with the ones that I haven't seen. And once again, to the ones that we happened to talk in the morning. This is a terrible time to talk about this topic because it's after lunch and it's a topic, maybe it's also because it's terrible because the topic it's really complicated. It's oil and gas and transformation to the net zero. And personally, when I was invited by the organizers to share a company at the port in Klaipėda story, how we adapt, what we do, because we also need to talk at this conference, Klaipėda Manifesto, about what we do here locally. I didn't want to go into this topic because I could have done it in a way, quite conventional way, say, okay, these are regulations, they're clear, the direction is clear, and we need financing, and we do ABC things, we do ESG reports, and this is what we do. But that wasn't the intention, and maybe in the spirit of being a millennial, I want to do something else. So, what are the prerequisites necessary for transformation of a company like KN? And first of all, what is KN, especially to our guests? So KN is a company which operates fossil fuel terminals, let's put it this way. All terminal was established here in Klaipėda more than 60 years ago. Then we have one more terminal in the middle of Lithuania. We have LNG terminal, and we have a terminal which we take care of in Brazil. So this is the competence that we are proud of, and it all started with LNG terminal in Lithuania. But briefly speaking, this is Klaipėda. This is Klaipėda old terminal. And interestingly enough, this was the terminal that helped Lithuania to survive the Soviet Union blockade in 1990 when we had embargo. So that was the only mean to import petroleum and to have the economy running. So this is quite a famous and legacy that we can be proud about, especially in these days. Subačius old terminal, it's in the middle of Lithuania. We are responsible for the special state reserves of fuel as a company. LNG terminal, no need to mention what is the importance today. And basically one more responsibility. So we have another example of providing energy security to the country. And even speaking of Brazil, and this is a courtesy of KNSU, We are responsible for ensuring that there is gas flowing safely and constantly reliably to the power plant in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, in the state of Rio de Janeiro, to provide electricity to the region. So energy security, but we have climate change. And as a company, we are also listed. We don't extract, we don't sell, but we just provide services of transshipment. So we still belong to this oil and gas, these bastards that caused the climate change. And how can we even dare to talk about the net zero transformation? Because everything seems to be clear. I mean, the agreements are in place. If you look at the global level, there are all the agreements. So this is United Nations. The EU has their own regulations. We've heard quite a bunch being mentioned today. USA have, for instance, Inflation Reduction Act. Everything is envisaged. The financing is envisaged. And we know what's necessary to be done to reduce our emissions, to stay below 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to the pre-industrial levels. And we know, once again, the bastards. This is oil and gas industry. So they're the ones who caused this. And according to Yuval Harari, that if we maintain the progress of the technological development, we as human beings, one day might become irrelevant. But it's even more applicable to oil and gas. Those guys have to become irrelevant in our net zero transformation. And the question mark is that, is it really so? I mean, is it really so? And do the companies like KN need to adapt? Should they be adapting? And can they offer any value in the net zero transformation and in the tomorrow's economy and in a blue economy, not to mention least? So going down the rabbit hole, what are prerequisites, and besides this is my personal opinion, what are the prerequisites for transformation of a company like KN that I've just presented for the net zero transformation? And this is something that's not conventional. This is my, please take it with some critical attitude and some humor. So number one, once again, getting back to the bastards topics. We have, of course, all the dog watches and NGOs just doing the great job of detecting and targeting and talking about the problems that the oil and gas industry is causing and not doing enough. So once again, these are like those Terminators who came to the Earth to destroy the humankind. They are really, really horrible. And oil and gas is horrible. And actually, they're the ones who do all the emissions, or the major emissions. And once upon a time, I happened to be a student in Harvard Law School. That was 12 years ago. I'm not doing some self-advertisement, but the thing is that I had a climate change and environment negotiation class with professors being members of United Nations Intergovernmental Panel. Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. That's a terribly long title. And then I asked them back then, I said, but what if it's not CO2 emissions that are causing the climate change? And maybe there is something else. And to that they responded, Rytis, if you don't believe that CO2 emissions is the cause, well, think about this thing, that we still keep on destroying biodiversity, which was mentioned many and multiple times here, especially here in the Baltic Sea region. And if you don't believe in CO2 as a cause of climate change, which I do not, I mean, I don't contest, it's important to think from this angle. If you don't believe a bit about CO2 emissions, or if you think that's not the main problem, the indirect impact is the loss of biodiversity. And that's probably even the bigger wave, not to mention that is causing the threat to the world and all the humankind. But at the end of the day, are really oil and gas companies, those bastards? At the end of the day, and this is prerequisite number one, this is realization, understanding, and convenient truth. One convenient truth, it is us that causing the problem. Because we are the ones who are the consumers of the products, services, of the lifestyle, comfort, and the ones who ultimately decide which products we acquire. So if we are glad to drive powerful engine vehicles and fly all around the world and keep on having this level of consumption, I mean, it's not just oil and gas. We are part of the problem. We are, everyone sitting here. So this is a prerequisite of perception. Number second, it's something that was mentioned many times today by Mindaugas, by previous speakers, by Ambassador, that basically to have an energy transition, we need to solve this energy trilemma, which was first, I guess, proclaimed by International Agency by International Energy Council. That's basically that if whatever we do in energy, it all goes down to three things: energy security, its affordability, and sustainability. And in a short run, you can't have them all three. You can have maybe one, you can have two, but to have them all at once is just impossible in a short run. And it's really affecting our decision-making and even net zero transformation, because we are human beings, and looking at the Abraham Maslow pyramid, we just love safety. This is the existential, I guess, the DNA that is engraved in our biology. We want to survive. And for survival, you need the safety and energy. And nowadays, it's even different situation, because it seems to be that, this pyramid needs to be updated, but for those lower bricks, you need energy. And there's one more thing, everybody knows it. So I guess it's not just about this upcoming winter, it's about maybe more winters coming in Europe and how we're gonna deal with that. And we can deal with that by switching to green electrons, to renewable energy carriers like hydrogen or some other forms of molecule, and handling CO2 emissions. But if we look back at this energy trilemma, in terms of technology, we still need to do really, really a lot. We need to do a big breakthrough how we handle these three particles to enable the energy trilemma question to be solved. And keeping in mind that energy security will be a big decisive factor in the coming years. Number three, this man. It goes down, again, goes back to criticism, because people unrightfully so criticize even the Paris Agreement and the whole net zero transition concept. And it's about comparing it with alcoholism, that, okay, we as human beings decided we are hooked on alcohol, so it's okay for us to keep on drinking for the next 29 years. And even, for instance, for speaking of carbon capture, so it's like another fridge of buying in advance, enough of supplies of beer, and especially if you stay here for longer, so keep in mind that we stop selling alcohol in Lithuania after 8 in stores. So if you go to a supermarket, just keep in mind. But it's just buying alcohol in advance to make sure that we have enough beer, when the party time comes. And I get it. I mean, I really, really sympathize with that. But then here is another problem, that as a solution we see, and this is the French Queen, Marie Antoinette, and this is just a meme, that as a solution we see and we think that, okay, but so we can solve this, and we can solve this by simply, let's say, buying an electric vehicle. That's as a solution. And the reality is that electric vehicles, they're not 100% green. We have a question of life cycle. So basically, to really address the climate change problem, we need to look at the life cycle. And this is just a good example. This is Bloomberg EVs index, based on their own methodology, but basically showing that, okay, there is no 100% net zero car currently produced because of the entire value chain and materials being used in that chain. So we really need to be mindful and aware of greenwashing, but in a good sense that whatever we do, we have to look at the life cycle. And if oil and gas companies do something, so it's not by default, by design, greenwashing. It's not by design, because once again, our efforts are currently limited by the technological advancement in this sense. Number 4, getting back to the second part of my presentation, simply, we need dreamers. This is an old quote. And to make this net zero transformation happening, we need really people who dream, who are ambitious, and we need energy. We need really energetic people. And I don't want to be discriminatory in the way, but I think that we need younger generations, and including mine, to take a big chunk of responsibility to enable this transformation happening. And we need those people in the companies like mine. In oil and gas companies, which are the bastards and are not attractive anymore, because it's more sexy, quote-unquote, to work in maybe a renewable energy company, wind providing company, and so on. Number 5, and this is getting to the very end, that cooperation is just insanely necessary. It's cooperation, cooperation, cooperation. To enable this cooperation between all the stakeholders, basically, and we talk about our company, its cooperation is the perception of the shareholders, stakeholders, local communities, government, and our clients. This is what we need. This is, to invent new ways of working and new ways to address the whole value chain and life cycle problems, we need cooperation, and this is what we do at KIAN. And last, because I might be running out of time, and this is the most fundamental question, is are we operating on a right, not business model, but economy model at all? Because the current model is based on profit, it's profit-driven, that's one thing. Another thing that we still live in economy of this planned obsolescence, and if you don't agree with me, I may ask, when was the last time you changed your phone? Maybe not that long time ago, depends. And yeah, it's the current economy stupid, as famously Bill Clinton said once upon a time and won the election. But if we go deeper, and this is the great book that I adore, is that maybe the main problem is not just the technology, maybe it's not just about the consumption of the fact in itself. The problem is still, it's indeed the economy, because the current economy is based on the unlimited growth. If you look at GDP, what is happening nowadays, it's the recession. It's like recession, will we have a recession, what we're going to do, and the central banks will raise interest, and so on, joblessness, and so on. So while the true concept, the right mindset, would probably be at some point to stop talking about the growth of the GDP and really to look for a flat GDP and say that maybe it's okay to live with a flat GDP, which is not growing. And the model that we currently work on and operate should be changed at all. So this is the proposition by the book. So I'm running out of time, but let's talk a little bit about KIAN, and I'm not going to spend much time. What we did, just 3 things in the spirit of all these prerequisites. We did extensive consultations with all the stakeholders and shareholders in terms of what they expect from us when it comes to sustainability and ESG, all criteria, and we mapped out the priorities. So it's including employees, institutions, and so at least we have some not out of touch reality criterions where to go. Second thing, and this is the ESG KPIs that we set in 2020, and of course they can be criticized. It's currently interim under review, but we set targets until 2024 for the reduction of emissions. Currently Scope 1, and we have also Scope 2 emissions. We have, of course, the challenge to calculate Scope 3 emissions, but I think the right way to go is 50%, not less than 50 by 2030. And also for the pollutions as such, that they should be reduced, and they should be reduced more than by half. And these KPIs are being under reviewed, and we'll hopefully adopt the new KPIs with the horizon of 2030 sometime maybe next year. And the last thing, okay, getting back to the technology and how we handle these 3 things necessary to enable transformation and net zero journey is basically we bet on these technologies. By using, again, all the criteria and then cooperating with different partners and exploring the new ways how we can, as an liquid energy and historically fossil fuel liquid energy handlers, how can we switch to the new types of fuel, which would be renewable, which would be maybe synthetic, and which would be net zero. And with the latest interest to have a share and a role in the offshore wind plants as well. So finally, on a final note, I mentioned these bastards and oil and gas companies, but maybe with all the humor, maybe we look at it from a different angle.
New mission. Once he was programmed to destroy the future.
You don't know what it's like to try to kill one of these things.
Now his mission
Get down.
is to protect it.
Come with me if you want to live.
So thank you. And this is, I'm just sending, yeah, I'm sending, this is so, it happened accidentally that we had a rabbit on Monday here in Klaipėda at the old terminal. So sending the best greetings wishes from the rabbit to all of you. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rytis. That was very entertaining. Thank you so much. And now I would like to invite our next speaker, Thomas Bjørdal. He's a cluster manager of the Norwegian renewable energy cluster Renergy, representing 100 plus companies and institutions, works with cross-sector cooperation projects within energy and transport. has initiated some of the leading Norwegian hydrogen Wally projects. He will present on a topic, electrification and hydrogen Wallis in maritime Norway, headlights, updates, and some do's and don'ts. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being invited. I represent the Norwegian Renewable Energy Cluster, which consists of around 100 companies and institutions within the whole energy sector. We have large traditional energy companies, tech companies, and also research and public owners. The company has, or the cluster has developed from being a classic energy cluster working with traditional energy production and distribution to a cluster that works more and more on the end users of energy. I'm very glad that point number 5 from the last speaker was cooperation, and that is what a cluster is doing. It's all about to cooperate when you can and compete when you have to. And what we are doing is enabling better cooperation with the members. And if we are going to do this, this is what we are actually doing, illustrated from the Norwegian aquaculture industry. This is what we are doing. We are actually transforming us from 2 to 1 energy systems. What used to be the energy system, known as production, distribution, and use of energy to households and industry, and the second energy system, which is the transport system, are now has to be seen in together. If you're going to run these sea farming industry on electricity, if you're going to run these vessels on electricity, it's not enough to build the smartest and the best vessels. You have to take into consideration the whole system, the whole grid, to make it possible, and also the technology being developed down at the seashore side. Described in, not in pictures, but in pictograms, this is the system we are operating in. And this system is also the way we, in Norway in general, the last few years, has succeeded with some of our major, most important pilot projects. That's because at the moment we started to look at the whole system, the whole value chain, it was possible to enable groundbreaking projects. We started several years ago with a project when we focused on technology developed in, for example, vessels, or a project on this side of the value chain. But to make it possible to do transformation, you have to take the whole value chain into consideration, or at least have some sort of control on the value chain, because we are actually developing a new market, complete new market. We have done that before as well. It's not that many years since we went from coal and steamboats to oil and diesel engines, and that's also that transformation took part for over 10 years, most of it actually. So we have done it before, but now we have shorter time. This is the way we in Norway changed our whole ferry industry from diesel to electricity. And this is the first way we succeeded. That was because the ferries are public driven. It's an existing monopoly market, so you have control over the market, so it's possible to do it. And the cost of the ferries are so high, so if you put in some batteries and some expensive charging systems, it doesn't make them that much more expensive. During the last few years, this has increased very fast. We are now building, changing most of the ferries on battery electric ferries. We are also building a maritime industry on this, so it's a win-win. We have 2 or 3 large battery assembling industries in Norway, developing most of the batteries being used in these ferries, and we also have system integrator companies that are getting really good on this. So this is an opener for a new maritime industry in Norway. The next level is the more complicated cases, and that is when you're going to move something heavy a bit longer than 30 minutes. battery as energy carrier does not work for longer sailing distances. Then you have to make a roadmap. We made one for hydrogen, where you actually try to figure out where is the best suited spots to start production of hydrogen. You know, the chicken or the egg problem you probably have heard of. You try to figure out where to start. And that work has also been followed up by the central or the government, last government in Norway. We had some brave initiatives like this, the first hydrogen ferry on liquefied hydrogen, which is now in operation. Quite expensive, quite unnecessary, because it's a short travel. It could do it on battery electric, but you have to start somewhere, and you have to start in the small, and this could not be done by private companies. Our approach to this as a cluster, to figure out how can we help the industry or the private part of it doing the same brave steps as a government, to take the same amount of risk as the government, or not. The private industry can't take the same amount of risk, but to take higher risk. The first one was this, actually, that we have to look at smaller vessels, and we have to look at smaller markets. And the aquaculture industry in Norway is distributed and has lots of vessels, around 1,000-1,200 vessels of this type. And they operate, have sailing distances which are so far that they cannot solve it with battery solutions. Most of these vessels being sold now are sold with the large battery packs, so they are so-called diesel battery hybrids. And they reduce the emissions with maybe up to 50%. But if you want to go to zero, you have to have a better energy carrier. So we built this project with partners from the energy companies to the tech specialists, bunkering system specialists, to the ship designers, the shipbuilders, and the end user. I could have used several hours on this project, but the project for us was a groundbreaking project, and we have now reached the final investment decision for the companies. The boat are being built at this moment in mid-Norway as one of the first hydrogen boats, at least private funded boats. And also the production system for hydrogen, which enables small production of hydrogen for an early market at the price that it's not that wild as you could think of. This is an image of the system. The next project, see, I'm running out of time here, but we are also, what we see now is the larger projects in Norway are now also being developed, because the larger projects, the first vessels being drawn or designed, are now being sort of melted together with the first initiatives of production of hydrogen. This is a cargo ship, the Sea Shuttle, which now got a grant for building hydrogen-driven, hydrogen transport ships from some ship. And they are going to bunker at one of the hydrogen production sites, which also got granted the same summer. So here we have control over the market, or at least control over the value chain necessary. And we had some very exciting design on this, where you go back and use wind power again. This boat actually reduces its energy use when you slow down a little bit and go on sails. You reduce it with 40% on the sailing distance. And this one is also going into construction. This is the next phase of the public tender for ferries. We're actually building hydrogen ferries on the compressed hydrogen in Lofoten, in North Norway, 2 ferries, and production and bunkering units in Bodø for that. The investment decision is taken, and these are going to be built and going to be put on route in 2025. And these are the large, or sort of large production sites, for the first production sites of hydrogen in Norway. We have been working on 2 of these, and this is also is an enabler where the sites who got the grant were the sites who could argument best that they had the largest probability of getting the necessary market for starting of their production. Now I'm out of time. I could have used also a few minutes on this one. We're working on the fishery industry up in Lofoten. Large project where we also work with fishing vessels and retrofit of fishing vessels, which is also one of the large key projects in Norway at the moment. Okay, that was my quite fast presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. You are from one of the clusters, and I don't know if you know that, but Norway has many of these clusters. I don't know exactly how many we have. It's like a lot.
A lot.
And a lot of them are connected to the ocean industries somehow, like this one. So Renergi means in Norwegian clean energy. This is that cluster. And this is a program that has been from the government for many years to have different clusters. And if they all had given presentations like this, which they can, you end up becoming a technology optimist because so much is going on.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
So you think we're going to make the green shift?
Yes, definitely. We're going to make at least a lot of these projects are being built now. So this is a starter. And what the shift will look like in 3 or 4 years, in which energy carrier which will be used then, we don't know. But we have to start somewhere. And we're starting with the lowest hanging fruits and doing that. And that is the smartest move in Norway is when we started to focus on what is possible to do in a short time window. And that is to create value chains in areas where you have a big enough market for it. If you should do this with the buses or cars, you need the energy consumption from a ferry is the same as 2,000 cars. It's more difficult to get 2,000 cars to run on something new than one ferry.
You know, I also work with ship owners through the Ship Owners Association in Oslo. And the favorite question to any ship owner is, if you are building a ship now, designing a ship, what kind of fuel do you choose? What would you choose, Tom?
It depends on the difficulties here is if you're building a ship for long distance sailing, the answer is completely it's so difficult. But if you're building a ship for near coast sailing and you're looking for low risk, I would go for a diesel battery solution where it's possible to replace the diesel engine with something else, or a dual fuel diesel engine, so you could put in some hydrogen into it and reduce your emissions. If you go for zero emission at once and are ready to take that risk, it's compressed hydrogen with fuel cells and tanks.
Yeah.
And both of those are possible to do.
It is.
Today.
The favorite answer for many people is, I'm very happy I'm not a ship owner.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Thomas. That was so interesting to listen to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we are going to have a panel on renewable energy. And this is a fantastic lineup we have been able to get. I will just introduce them and then they will run themselves, so to speak. So can you all come up? The panelists, you are here already. That's fine. Well, I can introduce you. Sit down. That's fine. Very good. Because then I would like to start with, just a minute, start with Romana Hartke. She is a German working for a Norwegian company. Nice to see you, Romana. She used to work in Germany for E.ON and RWE, our main sponsor today. So, of course, we are very sad on RWE's behalf that you lost her to Aker from Norway, but Aker is very happy to have you. So that's Romana Hartke. She is a senior business development manager at Aker Offshore Wind. And her ambition is net zero emissions and beyond. And you only worked there since January this year, so that's quite new in that job. And then we have Karolis. Karolis, he's going to be online. Oh, no, you are there, exactly. So, Karolis, nice to meet you. Hi, good to see you. Please take your seat. He is a senior innovation expert at Ignitis Group. And Karolis, you write about yourself that I like to think of ways to succeed in changing any unclear situations by strategizing and asking sometimes tricky but always creative questions that lead to first-class and thought-through results. So, you know, do you have him in the panel? He will come with these tricky questions. No, but now you know. Be bold, yeah. And then we have the next one is Hannah. Hannah Marie Goodland, who is originally from Shetland, and she works with Equinor, luckily. So she works with Equinor for many years, and she's the head of the Baltic Sea Area Development at Equinor, the Norwegian oil and gas company, turning into renewable energy slowly, gradually. So Hannah, you work with the whole Baltic Sea area. Very happy to have you. So please, and you are very passionate about playing your part in shaping the future of energy across the region, you say on LinkedIn. That's very good. And then to lead all that, we have no less than Rytis, who is a consultant and runs his own company. And the company has a big name. It's called Energy Unlimited. Why did you change unlimited? I mean, choose unlimited, not limited. I think that's a rhetoric question. You and I have 60 mutual connections on LinkedIn. So we are, yes. 6-0, exactly. Now, I would like to say that he writes about himself. I am making renewable energy to happen in the Baltics. My focus is wind, offshore and onshore, and solar technologies. And then you say that my core operating principles are building win-win relationships and getting things done. So I think now you can make some win-win relationships and get things done with a panel. I wish you all the best. This will be very exciting. Give them a big hand, people.
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas. And I think we have another two great panelists who we have seen before. So Thomas and Rytis, please come in. So yeah. So yeah, we started with an excellent presentation from Rytis and Klaipėdos Nafta, but from oil and gas perspective, shifting to the renewable energy. And speaking about renewable energy, as Thomas presented, we have an exceptional panel with diverse backgrounds, diverse companies, diverse nationalities, and different perspectives. But to focus our discussion, I believe, Klaipėda is at the point of huge opportunities of offshore wind industry, and Equinor, Ignitis, Aker Offshore Wind, Klaipėdos Nafta, and RWE also, representing the offshore wind industry. So we will focus our renewable energy panel specifically on the offshore wind industry. And as this is a blue economy conference, so on specific blue economy and local supply chain opportunities for Klaipėda region. And I hope it will be insightful and dynamic discussion. And to start a bit from high-level notes, so there is offshore wind tender coming in Lithuania, 700 megawatt next year. Technical capacity in Lithuania now is 3.4 gigawatt, but actually 250 kilometers from Klaipėda, there's a potential of 25 gigawatt of offshore wind. And if you look at the all Baltic Sea, it's 95 gigawatts. And if you look at the all European potential, it's 450 gigawatts. So I would like to start with the question, we have to speak about the opportunities for Klaipėda. How to grasp these opportunities of, this expanding offshore wind industry in the different supply chains. And I would be very straightforward and would ask our foreign friends straightforward answer. Where do you see the strengths of Klaipėda in offshore wind industry from your perspective? So Hannah Marie, Romana, Thomas, be very specific and open about that.
And maybe I can start. So I think it's a pleasure to be here with you today. That's first off, I have to say, it's the first time I've been in Lithuania. and I'm absolutely sure it's not going to be the last. So thank you for having us so warmly. The one word that I would describe what I've seen today is ambition. This room is full of it, and you really have set the sights very high on what you want Klaipėda to be in terms of a Baltic Sea hub. And I think you should hold on to that ambition as you go forward towards 2030, because that's going to be your leading light. And I speak about this having gone through the same sort of transition that we've seen in Scotland, where I'm from, and from the Shetland Islands more specifically. I grew up on a family fish farm, so the blue economy is sort of at my heart as well, in the Shetland Islands. And I saw a sort of innovative, forward-leaning, small country like Scotland. It really set its sights on big ambition in terms of being the energy capital of Europe. And I think that Klaipėda and Lithuania, you have the chance to do the same, but you need to keep hold of that ambition. You need to be bold in terms of collaboration across the Baltic Sea countries. You need to be setting your sights on beyond borders. In Scotland, we've built up a fantastic supply chain when it comes to oil and gas, and we're now pivoting that towards renewables. We share crews, we share vessels, we share technology, rigs with our neighbours in Norway. And we've done that, and we've built up that through ambition and collaboration. And I think that you have a real chance now in the next 8 years towards 2030, if you hold on to those two words, ambition and collaboration, and set your sights beyond the borders of Lithuania. The Baltic Sea is going to need more than just one hub. And I think that Lithuania could be a front runner in that.
Romana, do you have anything to add to these very good points, I think, from Hannah?
Yeah, so I agree to all points to Hannah Mary, and so I think the hard facts, what we see here in Klaipėda is, of course, a very good location, so really being in the middle of the eastern Baltic Sea, so have direct connections to Sweden, Denmark, Germany, very close to Poland, and then also up in the north. So I think that's very obvious. Then we see the existing infrastructure, good connections regionally and internationally. So there is already a basis, what is very important. And so I think then connecting to the ambition, I think it is very helpful to have the showcase of the FSRU independence. So we have seen in the past that Klaipėda is possible with a political backup, so that the Lithuanians are hard in decision making. So we want the change and then to realize the change. So, and I think this showcase from the past is very important also for us as international investors to see they are willing to do and they are able to do. And I think this is one very important advantage compared to other ports that are now developing in the Baltic Sea. So I think that's very important to continue on this showcase and flagship project. And as we have heard before, that the German government is kissing the feet because they have recognized that in Lithuania there's a FSRU. And so let's continue and develop here Klaipėda as offshore wind hub for the Baltic Sea region, because this is also clear, it's then not only for the Lithuanian offshore wind or renewable energy transition, it's beyond. So this could really be the hub to serve for more Baltic Sea countries. And the other thing I would like also to emphasize, because I was part of the German offshore wind project in the Baltic Sea, Arkona, and there we have been one of the first projects to build out the port in Sassnitz, Port Mukran. And I know that Klaipėda already had an exchange with Port of Mukran, so this learning, how did the other ports transformed to be an offshore wind hub? So really go and copy the best solutions, copy what is possible to Klaipėda, get the chance for this exchange. And I've seen in Arkona, and Hannah Mary is also my colleague from the old Arkona times, it's possible for ports, also for smaller ports than Klaipėda. You need to be ambitious, you need to be or have the cooperation with all relevant stakeholders, and then just do it. And we have seen in past with the LNG transformation, Klaipėda is the right port to be for offshore wind.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's a very good point on these bold decisions, and which time shows are the right decisions. And Thomas, from your experience, you presented this nice, I would say, different sector integrations into one. So, what would be your suggestion for Lithuania to do from the very beginning regarding the sector integration or other Norwegian experience?
I think that the problem is, or the challenge is to what I was talking about in my presentation is to build a new market. That is what you're doing and what you're going to do, and you have to use the possibilities that especially the offshore wind farm project gives you, and the ambition to actually do the best project ever, and to use that project to build local industry, local knowledge, competence, high tech, and deliver as much as possible to that project must be an ambition, because that is happening quite fast now. And I think it's important to move fast from this high ambition to actually do something. And this has to be well, you need to have the whole system, and everybody has to join in on this, as you were saying here, and both the local authorities, but national authorities, everybody has to join this high ambition, and you have to. I think the key here is building of this offshore wind farm. Think about how to do that in the best sustainable way, the best local industry enabling way, and so on, and really take that into a huge project for the Klaipėda harbor.
And speaking about the local industry, so actually Rytis is the only representative from Klaipėda, I believe. So yeah, you have your presentation about transforming from traditional energy to fossil-free energy. There was words offshore wind at the end of the presentation. So could you elaborate? How do you see Klaipėdos Nafta in this offshore wind development?
Thank you. So, first of all, we are in a very early stage, and probably I would say maybe lagging behind a little bit. Well, with respect to where our distinguished colleagues representing distinguished, well-experienced companies are. That said, it all goes back to the victorious or winner's philosophy that we did a LNG terminal. I was a chief lawyer back then, and it was really working 24 hours non-stop with this big, bold ambition for more than 2 years. We succeeded, even though it was many people didn't believe, many were against. There were more criticism than support, I think, at some points and some stages in the project. But there was a clear set direction set by the government. There was empowerment by the shareholders to carry out this project, and we had a superb team. But zero prior knowledge. So going back to a wind farm project, we think that we can also get involved, and because it's not tied to a single company, but we can be the ones who can be in a winning team because we did it once in the past, and it was also thanks to cooperation with HERC. And Mindaugas presented their ambitions and successes today. So that's one thing, track record serving as an inspiration. Second thing is, of course, there is a location. I mean, we look at these strengths and weaknesses that we have. We have a great location. We have a great location in the port. This is the first jetties that you just constantly you just right away go into the port and we're there. So if you, once again, if you look at the life cycle carbon emissions, it's also beneficial, even though it plays a minor part, that the closest proximity to the future wind farm projects. And the third thing is that maybe it's, again, maybe it's the most defining why we're interested, because we see we can, and there is no other way for us to go net zero. I would frankly be honest about it. And that's one of the best ways how we can create value, not stealing the energy production from because we can't, being regulated and because of the third energy package, but providing and doing the things that we are good at. So it's dealing and taking care of infrastructure, which is about energy transmission, energy storage, and using our engineer skills on building the new ones. So 3 reasons, but at the end of the day, it's all about the shareholders. So our biggest shareholder is the government, and in a way, I see that we might be having a sort of a competition even with other companies, and in a way, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I say in a way because I think it motivates everyone to be better, to be more sharp, and I hope that, and let's hope that the best, the most capable player wins. And it's just not about one phase. We have 700 megawatts, but then we have another 700 megawatts. So I believe that we can create a big, big value to the economy and also enable net zero transformation of the country and also the oil and gas companies, as we know. So quite an extensive answer, I believe, but and again, we understand that everybody understands here in Lithuania that none of the company can do it on its own. Lithuania-based, locally established, none of the company, and you throw a stone into me if you if you think that I'm wrong. And we need cooperation. So basically, the ones who manage to work out the best cooperations with reliable partners, they're the ones who can execute these projects and also power Lithuanian economy.
Yeah, so, yeah. And we have, Ignitis also state-owned, another company representative. You're in partnership with Ocean Winds, an experienced company in offshore industry. And how do you see, how do you see the this local economy topic? Because I hear from the international developers that the potential is here and it's actually the bigger than Lithuanian borders. How do you see that from your perspective?
Yes, so hello. I guess I have 2 points maybe on, to comment also, because I come from innovation background, and we work with, at Ignitis, with innovation startup companies, these early stage companies that basically develop new technologies, innovation, and then apply them, in real environment. So, first thing, I think we all agree, so there's nothing for me more than to agree with all the basically speakers, but we probably need to clearly understand one thing, that Klaipėda may become, if moving fast, one of the leading hubs, or the leading hub maybe in the Baltic Sea region. Klaipėda is probably not going to become an offshore wind leader, in the world, or like globally, basically. So really need to focus on our local strength, what we have here, and the services and competencies that we can provide from our local local environment, so to say business. So as Thomas, I think, mentioned that we're creating a new industry really here, so we've never had anything like this in Lithuania before. So it's very important that we prepare for that, So I think, one of the key things that we still lack, and I think, but we focus on that very clearly right now, is educational support. So basically, we need to create competencies, so to say, to provide services later on to offshore, like servicing activities, and maybe even export these competencies elsewhere. So because I come from innovation background, another point, I guess, is I'm really excited, and I'm really excited to see how the startup community, or how the startup companies may find a new niche in Lithuania too. We have a pretty strong background right now in recent years in Lithuania of increasing support to local startup, regional startup companies from business angels, from we see lots of risk capital basically also coming into Lithuania. So we see lots of support here, and maritime technologies, energy sector technologies, like with maritime together, this is a completely new niche. So I'm really excited, to see if we're gonna excel on that, because we have, Klaipėda has, Lithuania and Klaipėda has all the necessary grounds for new companies, for new startups to be set. So we in Klaipėda even, we have many co-working spaces, risk capital comes in here, but we've never really had a chance to apply it. So basically I really hope that from the startup building up, from these communities, from new companies, we may even see some new technologies that we could export. So for example, I don't know, if taking offshore maintenance or I don't know, other innovative services, we can build up that here, not necessarily in the port area, but just basically in Klaipėda and Lithuania, and we may also sell these services elsewhere. So I think it will provide us very cool and new opportunities, for new companies that we've never seen before, and we maybe even export that elsewhere.
Excellent point. And I saw that Thomas is...
A short comment, because that was a good example of how you could use the tender for the offshore wind. You could let the bidders of the tender on the score they get on how they make it possible for startups and so on to be a part of this. Give a higher score the more startups you bring into your project. That could be something that's just one of many possibilities that can be done using public force, actually.
Yeah, and Thomas, I think that's a good point, and it's actually being included. I think so. Institutions that are preparing the tender, this is a compliment for our government institutions. Basically, I think they've included that 3% of all the building cost and investment will have to come go to local SMEs. Yeah. So and I think 10% in the operation of the offshore wind park. So that's been thought of, I think, and but and there are many companies today that can cover some of the things in building up or maintaining offshore wind, but I think we will have many more. We will see many more to come.
Yeah. So we are agreeing on everything, I see. So it's a very like-minded panel. So we have to spice up somehow, because now we agree there's areas for startups, there is an areas for jetties operators, there is for manufacturing companies, for catering companies. So it's multiple opportunities. So, but and there have been this morning there were talks about biodiversity by the minister, and it's also one of the topics, I believe, when we speak about the offshore wind, how to develop, and then the agreement is not so smooth as we all sit. So maybe do you have any comments on biodiversity topic and how to do that to make all the stakeholders happy on the biodiversity front? Implementing the offshore wind project, especially once it will be a first offshore wind project in Lithuania, so it will be on the specific focus and how to make it, so to say, environmentally bulletproof and biodiversity side as well. So probably comment from Equinor side.
So it's a really important issue. Going forward, we're going to need to use our ocean space far better than we've used our land space up until now. And I just want to see a show of hands. Who here works in the fisheries sector? And we're at a blue economy conference and there's one hand. 2 hands. 3. Okay. 3 hands. If we're talking about coexistence, the fundamental principle of that is dialogue and getting people in the room. And it means having these discussions as early as possible. And if we're going to have an offshore wind operational here in 2027, these discussions need to have happened yesterday or beginning now. So that is an encouragement that I would give to Klaipėda, to the networks that you have, to Lithuania as a whole. Really start to think about these sectors that are going to be integrating with one another. Because offshore fisheries, offshore aquaculture, offshore energy, they interact in a very, very close space, and it can get quite challenging to find a good solution. And the best way about going about that, and we've had experience from Scotland, from Norway of successful coexistence, and England, is about having these dialogues early on so that people can have a meaningful consultation, so that you can have the information readily available, and that you're able to not just go in and bulldoze through a project. Because our community offshore is the fishers, it is the aquaculture sector, it's the marine sector, it's the transport, it's the recreational. And as I said at the very start, we're going to have to become better at coexisting and finding better ways to multi-use the sea around us, because going forward it's going to, I can't remember who said it, but it's going to provide the majority of our energy and the majority of our protein. So we have to have these round dialogue tables, and next year I hope when I ask the question how many fisheries representatives there are, there's more than 3 hands. So that's an answer from me, Rytis.
You will see them at the doors protesting. Next year. Yeah, but very, very good point. I think especially on the stakeholder engagement from the early on, and it's, I think, going beyond the fisheries. So also the bird watchers, the visual impact. You know, all these topics on these mega infrastructure projects are, have to be taken care as early as possible. Because any unsolved questions at the later stage would be very challenging for all the parties, I believe. And we touched upon the regional cooperation topic, but there are some views that the winner takes it all in the Baltic states, as there's also a good song about that. But that there is port development in Poland, there is Paldiski port in Estonia, and so whether Klaipėda has to move super fast to be the front runner, because otherwise there will be no opportunities for Klaipėda. So my question would be, let's do an open question. So whoever wants to jump in. Karolis, you.
Yeah, I can jump in.
You are front runner. You are front runner. So.
I'm a front runner. So basically, I think one of the most important things in this competition, I guess, it will be first mover advantage anyway. So basically, whoever is able to attract most attention from investors, I guess, from international investors, in terms of adapting the port, in terms of preparing it basically for these operations, will probably take the largest chunk of it, because being realistic, what I was saying a bit earlier, we probably may see some huge players coming into our region. So Siemens, I don't know, like other companies, servicing the hardware infrastructure and so on. And if we're able to attract them here, I guess in Klaipėda, we probably won't see another big, same company servicing operation happening like next doors, because that wouldn't make sense. The distances in the sea are quite low, basically. So the first mover advantage, and we're quite fortunate that I think Klaipėda is up front right now. So it is a front runner right now, I think. And but what it's important, I guess, to take for the Port Authority from our panel discussion, I guess, is that let's not lose that momentum, basically. Let's not lose that front runner, first mover advantage, basically. So we need to act fast and basically finalize the alignment of what needs to be done, finalize the talks basically, and start acting. So what we've heard from some other speakers today as well. So I think we have the interest from locally, we have the interest from internationally, from investors. Let's not lose that. Let's move fast basically, and let's cooperate, of course. But you know, the last thing we want to see is to stand in Klaipėda port and see a ship coming to an offshore farm from other country, servicing it and going back somewhere else, and we have no activity in Klaipėda. So that would be, I think, the worst case scenario. We want to do as much as we can here, employing local people, employing local capital competencies, and employing, you know, local regional companies.
Yeah, also I would like to comment. So one thing, I also see the momentum for Klaipėda that the time is now to be the first offshore wind hub in the Baltic Sea. And I think one supporting point is now with Lithuania being the first tendering in this region, that for us as developers, it's very important to have low LCOEs. So there the market is under extreme pressure, and here really short distances can be key. So here I see definitely an advantage. Then just repeating the figures from the Marienburg Declaration, 19.6 gigawatt by 2030. We have now 2.8 gigawatt in the Baltic Sea. So this is just the beginning. So there's so much more to come, but we need to start. And here I really see Lithuania with support of Klaipėda and the Lithuanian tender. And also this is only the first tender with the next to come. So let's start now, use these regional advantages, short distances, and yeah, the experience from Klaipėda we see as international developers. So here I agree, it's now the momentum, and then it's more to come.
One small comment, and don't be afraid of other front runners. There's room for plenty front runners. It's the slow runners that will have the problems. So it's important to have several ports that are high ambitions, because there's room for more and there's need for more, actually. And you have the ability of doing the first move on offshore wind, and that's a great opportunity, which you have to take with both hands and both feet and everything. Yeah.
Okay, so Rytis, do you want to?
Yes, I can add. So reflecting on LNG experience, I can reminiscence back in the days of 2012 when I joined the company, that even back then there were LNG projects on the papers all around Baltic Sea. So, and primarily one in Latvia, one in Estonia, one in Finland, one more in Poland, if I'm correct, and even more actually in the region. And the thing is that it was us who did it, not on the papers, but brought it to the reality. And some of those projects, then also to mention Germany, which is, I guess, in my personal humble opinion, unfortunate, because we were involved in Germany. They said, no, but we can wait, maybe we can do hydrogen, but no. So the thing is that it's really about being a front runner is one thing, but finishing and then starting a new distance. So I guess it's more like an Ironman. It's not, you know, you can get exhausted if you don't plan, if you don't prepare well, but it's important to finish. And the thing is that there is more space for, as Thomas said, so there is no single winner. And the Baltic region is so vast in terms of possibilities and opportunities. And so I want to believe that it's like for us, that we don't just think and dream about the Lithuanian offshore power plant and on them services, but we also look at Poland. Whether you believe it or not, we look at Poland, because this is not the plan to become bastards and steal everyone's piece of pie. But and I believe that the same is applicable to all of you guys, or most of you guys, that this tender is a possibility to get familiar, get to know the region, get to know the mentality even in a way, because even Baltic states share some similarities and some differences. Get to know differences as well, and find your share, because I think maybe at the end of the day, maybe at the end of 2030, we can all finish, we can reach the finish line and be winners.
Yeah, it is a very good point. I think, the time is now, but it's an Ironman. So if you start very fast, you can start decreasing the energy now. So it has to be somehow planned. But the time is now, and I think one of the topics, would be a very specific. What we have so-called a shared vision or dream that Klaipėda would be an offshore-related services, products hub in the region, not only in Lithuania. But what would be, a specific takeaways? So to say, what could be done by the authorities or by the other market participants, by the universities, by the Klaipėda municipality in the next 12 months, for example? What would be, a very practical solution from your end to, as the time is now, and to kick off and to keep it further? So, who is willing to take this question?
So I think, as we have already mentioned so many topics, biodiversity, cooperation with municipalities, with national policymakers, with research institutes, I think to start now is really to sharpen the scope, I think you have also said, to be sharp. So I think Klaipėda, or the port of Klaipėda, the first step is to define the scope. Do we want to be for the manufacturers, so attract Siemens or the monopile manufacturers to have here a hub for manufacturing? Do we want to concentrate on installation and operation? Do we want to concentrate to attract startups to boost our own economy with the young people coming? So I think it's important now to define the scope, be sharp on this, and then communicate and find the cooperation partners. And don't get lost in all the options that are now on the table. So that would be my advice, how to start.
Very good. Hannah?
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm going to add, though, so the time is now and the people are us. That's the sort of well-known phrase, and it's something that I think is a good guiding light. I think that the Baltic Sea and Lithuania, as an example within that, has an advantage to learn from the mistakes that we have gone through in the North Sea in terms of the consenting hurdles and the bureaucracy and the time that is taken to get offshore wind farms up and running. Equinor just now is developing the world's largest wind farm, Doggerbank. That is 15 years in the making, and it takes 15 hours to put up one of these turbines. There's something not quite right there. And if we're going to reach 2030, and that's not the end point, 2040 and 2050 is on the way, we have to overcome that. So that's number one, consenting. Number two, the liberation and sort of integration of the Baltic Sea markets in terms of offtake and interconnection, hybrid projects. I think the Baltic Sea has a really unique advantage in that because of the distances between the countries. It makes it possible. And I think that you could be seeing that the Baltic Sea becomes a real powerhouse of Europe. And then the third point is around education. And this is a sort of plea to not just the universities. And I think that that is really key. We talk about education in terms of higher education quite a lot. And what I really hope that the energy transition doesn't turn out to be is a middle-class academic project. because we need to mobilize absolutely everybody at the levels of education, from apprenticeships right through to masters, to be understanding about the energy transition, to have knowledge about it. Because here's the thing, if you understand something, you can be involved. And when you're involved, you can make a change. And I think that that education right through from shop floor up to boardroom, that's crucial. So a plea to the apprenticeship schools, to the colleges here in Klaipėda, start now. Start thinking about what these technicians on the wind farms are going to look like. Start thinking about the certificates that they will need, about the marine certificates that they will need to operate the vessels, the control rooms, to be able to climb these turbines, as opposed to just the university degrees. So I think that those are my 3 points.
Very good points. Yeah, I agree. And the time flies. You know, you blink and it's 3 years pass. So yeah, you have to prepare as soon as possible. Yeah, to have. Yeah, I believe there's much possible engagement locally. Yeah, to make not only the infrastructure but human involvement as well.
Yeah, I would just like to stress one thing on education, really, because you know, as I sometimes say, 2030 is tomorrow. 2030 is tomorrow. It's not in 8 years. So what I mean by that is basically that lots of these operations that we will need to set up here in Klaipėda, especially, take long lead time. So I'm not only talking about infrastructure, that's an obvious one. We need time to develop infrastructure, the right bearing capacities, you know, for the port. So basically adapt it. That's fine. That's technical things. You know, what's really important to me, and what I'd like to stress also is probably education. So that's why Ignis Group as well just recently joined the Lithuanian Maritime cluster. We've launched these Energy Smart Start programs just very recently to support, you know, young people with grants going to study in the energy sector, because we really need these specialists, not just specifically in offshore, maritime, but looking, you know, throughout the whole energy sector. So we're doing that. We see that if universities change these, you know, educational programs, let's say very quickly in a year, because like educational year has already started today. So we're going to start next year, and then these people are going to study for like 4, 5, 6 years maybe. Yeah, so they're going to come out of university in 2026, 7, 28, and it's almost too late. It's almost that you're standing, you know, with this knowledge gap right now on the edge. But it's not a tragic problem. We will collaborate. We will take some know-how and knowledge competencies from other companies, from other countries. We will have many expats, I'm sure, you know, working here in Klaipėda and helping us to set this up. But I think this is a very good opportunity to us to learn, you know, and to take this educational like know-how from others and integrate it here. But because we will definitely need that, and yeah. And another thing, I guess, is the regulatory environment. So it's quite boring. So it's clear what we have to do. We're not going to touch on that quite a lot. But regulatory environment is also lacking because we haven't had much activity in the sea in Lithuania, basically. Like, you know, so we will need to fill out this gap in terms of regulatory environment too, you know. So, for example, like work in the sea at night and you know, many things, you know, many areas that we will have to expand from onshore to offshore in the regulatory space. But we're going to do that.
Any comments, Rytis, from
on the top what was said? I can add, and then once again, full disclosure, my personal opinion based on my work and practice all those years in Klaipėda, that stable political and public support is necessary, and that implies that it has to be informed support. So there is no just a support by itself out of the support, because people, they first need to understand the importance, the repercussions, the benefits, and the role it plays in the Lithuania's economy, also in the net zero transformation, and the value that these projects create. And they need to be educated again and again on the benefits, because the support is really, it's really important. It can serve as a lubricant, if I may say so, for any decision-making institutions and coordination of the policies that are needed among education institutions, municipality, other municipalities, various stakeholders. So that said, I guess we need to do a lot now. Everybody, that it's not just about the state, the government, but all of us who are considering potentially to participate and take place, we need to speak, we need to go and speak about it and make sure that the public is on our side. So I mentioned it as a prerequisite for transformation for oil and gas as well, because if you listen to the people who shoot out and there were these discussions that, okay, but this is a visual noise and okay, and all these negative side effects and who's gonna get out of it what, and one city is gonna get, another one's not gonna get, and so it makes damage for reputation, and we need a good reputation, and then again, stable political and public support, so to make sure that we finish on time. And getting back to the LNG terminal, it's not just, once again a self-advertisement, but there were many disagreements among various stakeholders and even the municipalities, institutions, but we had the law, we had the will, and we even had this interinstitutional format of committee presided by the Prime Minister, so that's quite a high profile, to from time to time to take a look and take care of all those disagreements, because most of those disagreements, they come out of lack of conversation and sometimes lack of understanding. So I don't know if that's the way to go with these projects, but some healthy involvement from the government might be also at the ministry level, perhaps, I don't know, but it might be beneficial to the success of these projects.
But first, you have to do what Romano said at the start here. You have to clarify the scope, and you have to define the scope, and you have to sharpen the scope, and work hard on that. And then you have to anchor the scope to the whole area, to Klaipėda, from the fisherman to the top politician, to everybody. And then you know what you have to do, and you have to go for what that is your local or your advantages. If it is a deep sea harbor, then okay, then you work for that. If it is the offshore wind, if Klaipėda is the offshore wind harbor of the Baltic Sea, yeah, you go for that. If it's the energy hub of the Baltic Sea, you go for that. But that you have to find that out by clarifying, defining, and sharpening the scope. That is the most important, and that is what you have to do now, within short period of time.
And it's very good that we have this discussion now, facilitated by Klaipėda AD here. So I think it's a good area to discuss. I would like to open a floor to some question. If you have any, there is one hand already. So I'll give the microphone. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Paulius Zapolskis, TGS Baltic Law Firm. Thank you very much for interesting discussion. Just one question. I don't mean to decrease any optimism for sure, but one elephant in the room, maybe talking about offshore, is the shortages in the supply chain. And most of the countries are planning to build these offshore wind farms in the second half of this decade. Right, and we hear that Poland is planning more than 10 gigawatts, and Norway announced 30 gigawatts, and Estonia, Latvia, everyone. And we have like 3 offshore turbine suppliers right now. And for sure, I think there will be a problem with that. Any ideas on how can we overcome that? And because even if we implement all these nice ideas and we are really fast and ready, that might be a bottleneck. So can we somehow prepare for that, or is it something unavoidable? If nobody wants to answer, then Rytis, you will have to answer this.
Do you want to address it to specific?
No, it's
to me. I see it's to me. But any of you?
yeah, I wouldn't mind just to offer my view on that. So what's obvious that being fast again is maybe #1 decisive factor, because if you can do the tender faster, have a winner, procure long lead items faster than other guys, that gives you an advantage. That's a very simple question. And then when it comes to technology, of course, we need a breakthrough, raw materials, nobody knows. Then again, if anybody can throw a stone if they know what's going to be like macroeconomics and supply chains in the year from now, or in 2 years from now when we have a tender. So this is a high risk margin. Okay, what can happen? But then again, I share optimism that supply chains and the businesses will adapt better. They will be in a better shape in 2 years from now than they are today.
Hannah?
Yeah, maybe I can just give a sort of short reflection. I think you've hit the nail on the head. We are facing a crisis when it comes to supply chain. I don't see that going away anytime soon. I agree with Rytis in that the sort of line of sight from governments to developers gives us the confidence to place those orders and place them before sort of crunch time comes and we can't get anything in. I also firmly believe that crisis breeds innovation. And I think that the supply chain crisis, the energy crisis that we're in currently, will have that technology breakthrough. And the third point is, as we head towards 2030, more of the institutionalized, developed and grounded oil and gas supply chain companies are going to pivot across. And I think that that will have some space from the bottom-up perspective in trying to fill some of the gaps that you correctly identify. But it is something that is a storm that's happening right now, and it is something that keeps us, all of us, awake at night.
Yep. So I can reiterate what the colleagues said, and I think looking at the Klaipėda, it's also an opportunity because I think it's ongoing discussion whether what would be the markets or Klaipėda jumping in the supply chain. So now there is a shortage and the stress of the supply chain. So for Klaipėda companies, for Klaipėda terminals, so different parts of the blue economy ecosystem to jump into the offshore wind industry, now is the time. I think we can reiterate this again. And now we are running a bit out of time, so I'll try to summarize it. So I think one message I heard, Klaipėda is frontrunner and the time is now. So this is a bit of an executive summary. And to achieve this enabling Klaipėda economic opportunities for offshore wind, you need cooperation, involvement, political support, and also narrowing down the scope what we all the stakeholders would like to achieve. And that's, I think, a nice outcome of our 50 minutes discussion. Thanks for excellent panelists. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for the audience. I think we will be around here for the rest of the day, so please feel free, I think, to approach any of us with any questions related to the offshore wind, and we would be happy to answer. So thanks again, and looking forward.